Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. It's so awesome to be able to hang out with you today. We're on all the podcast platforms and it's video format on YouTube. So check it out and send it along to somebody. You know, in this series, we've been talking about design because I really think it's one of those things that's all around us and we never see it. What I mean is we never recognize it, and all the intentionality, all the skill that goes into the design of a room, to something we wear, to even the food that we eat. And I think when we begin to recognize it and appreciate it, it can really add even more value to our lives, and we can even participate in it. And today we have a very special guest all the way from Knoxville, Tennessee. And any of you folks who have been to Gatlinburg have probably been to Knoxville or flown into Knoxville to actually get to Gatlinburg. But anyways, we have a pastry chef. I think that is the right terminology today. Caitlyn Cox, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at, about your family, and we'll get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I have been a pastry chef for a bit over 12 years now. Grew up in South Florida, went to Central Church. Family's been involved ever since kind of the beginning of it, and moved around quite a bit. And now I'm here at RT Lodge, executive pastry chef. I run all things that have to do with pastry and bread and events within that realm. So it's quite an exciting life that I get to lead.
Now, if you're watching on YouTube, some folks might recognize you because I understand that you participated in one of those, I don't know what you call them, television shows. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I think it was at kind of the end of COVID. Got approached to do Best Baker in America on Food Network. And that was a really great experience because I got to showcase everything that I'd learned up till then. Very stressful experience, trying to squeeze all of my knowledge and perspective and artistic skills into a short amount of time to be judged in front of America. So that was a little nerve-wracking, but definitely very fun and good experience to meet other people within my industry.
Now, where did you record the show at?
It was in Tucson, Arizona. It was during that snowstorm in February a couple years back, and that was the only area that missed the snowstorm.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And how long were you there? How long did you record for?
It was about 3 weeks. They kind of split it into a short amount of time. Usually they do it for like a month and a half, and they pretty much cut it in half due to COVID restrictions. So it was a little bit of long days and short nights, but still a really fun experience that is very once in a lifetime kind of thing.
So that was 2 years ago. So, yeah, right?
Yeah.
So as you look back on it, do you look back and think you've got now 2 more years of creativity and experience? Do you look back now and think, oh man, I would do things a little bit different?
Totally. I sometimes see my friends within my industry still go on other Food Network shows, and I try to watch them and be supportive. And I'm like, man, if I, had these extra 2 years, I feel like I would have done it a little bit differently. But I think that's part of growing and learning. So it's good experience no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, and was that your first TV experience as far as being on TV?
Yeah, that was definitely the first experience. I had never understood what it was to be on TV. I think most people get in this industry because they like to be behind the scenes. We're in the kitchen. We don't have to face any guests or people or TV screens usually, and we're just in our own world. And it was definitely something that I had to get used to because it was the opposite of what I was used to. So definitely a new experience.
But you did well. What did you place?
I got to the finale, and I was very surprised with that. But, I think that it's just, you just are doing your best, and it was really cool that I actually was the judges thought I should go to the finale. I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, that's something congratulations. It's one thing to even be on the show, let
Yeah,
alone to make it finale. So,
yeah.
I bet all the like where you're working now. I love to make sure everybody knows that you were on that finale and that they have the unique pleasure of your services there.
Yeah, they enjoy, talking about it a lot and, teasing me about it sometimes, but, that's all in good fun and it was worth it for sure, and they loved it.
Okay. Do you ever come in and they're playing the show on the TV?
No, luckily not, but there was a picture hung up of me crying in the kitchen for a good couple months after the show aired, so that was fun.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you do. And before we kind of jump into that, I've asked really all of our guests the same question. What has surprised you the most just about people in general, as you pursued your career and then even had the experience we were just talking about on television, just
Yeah.
people in general, anything that you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting people to be like that, respond like that, good or bad, but anything that
Yeah.
surprised.
Within the industry?
Yeah, or outside, just how you have dealt with people as a chef.
Yeah, I think that, um, within the industry, there's a lot of, different people, a lot of misfit toys almost a little bit. It's definitely interesting being someone who's raised in a different way than most people that I work with, and there's a lot of things that, I wasn't prepared to experience, a lot of substance abuse, a lot of, loneliness. I think that the kitchen, um, invokes a family or a idea of it, and maybe that's why all these people kind of rally together and kind of choose this industry because maybe they had a family now that they didn't before. People outside of the industry, I think people are kind of further away from understanding how to cook for themselves or bake for themselves. So they're always kind of surprised how easy things are. And I'm surprised that it's like, oh, this is so very simple and something that I thought that most people understood and they don't always. So it's interesting to see that contrast of, oh, I went to school for this, but it isn't necessarily common knowledge.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. When you think about what made you choose pastry over, well, first of all, define for us what a pastry chef is.
So I guess a pastry chef is someone that specifically deals with desserts or bread or anything that has to do with baking specifically, breakfast related desserts, bread service for restaurants. That's really how you describe it.
And what made you choose that as opposed to some other part of the kitchen or some other role?
I think that there are two different people in the kitchen for sure. There's people that cook and people that bake. People that cook are very free spirited and kind of like can kind of be on, you know, just kind of make things up as they go. Baking is the opposite. It's a science. It's very specific. We scale everything out to grams. Um, Sometimes a little bit of a type A personality creeps in there a little bit. So for me, I feel like the science behind it was the most interesting part. For me, I feel like pastry combines science and art. And then when you get into a restaurant, it's almost like a sport during your service. And so it kind of combines all these things that I grew up doing. So it's exciting.
Wow. So I guess I've never really thought about it in that way, where you think about someone in another role, cooking food, or they're a lot of times on, again, I'm just going on TV. I mean, peanut butter and jelly is what I go, but watching others in my home and then on TV, they're tasting it as they go, and it's like a little bit salty, where I guess with baking, you really don't know if what you put together works out until it's finished.
Yes,
Is that
exactly. It's not, you can't fix things, which is a little stressful. Sometimes you just have to start over, and that's okay too. But it is a lot of research and development and taking recipes that you already know, manipulating them, and using the science behind it to then create something new. And that's kind of where the creativity of that comes in.
wow? Because even putting that in my mind, thinking about the television show earlier, where like Top Chef and all those, they're got to make something out of the blue, but they're tasting it
Yeah.
and adapting as they go. Where you got to kind of lay it all out, and
Yeah.
then it works out.
Fingers crossed it works. If not, then I'm gonna have to figure out how to do it in 10 minutes, and that was the reality of it.
That that's for me. That's kind of eye opening because I've never thought about the difference in and so different types of people would be drawn to
Yeah.
to those kind of professions. That's interesting. So, what is of the breads and the desserts and those things? Is there one that you enjoy making more than any of the others?
I think that before I would say yes, and now working at so many different places through my career, I've worked at a bakery, I've worked at a restaurant, now I've worked at a hotel, I've worked at a couple different leveled restaurants of fine dining, casual, whatever, and now it's more exciting to be able to do something different all the time. It's exhausting to do the same thing every day over and over again. So with the variety of the hotel and doing all of these things within this one realm, it's nice because nothing ever gets boring and you can try new things all the time and kind of push yourself creatively to continue that process.
Now, do you bake at home, or you do so much of it at work? You're like not so much.
Sometimes, I mean, definitely when family is around, I make sure to bake something, but my daily,
Patient when family's there, of course. I'm
yeah,
sure.
usual days, I'm like, no, I don't want to make anything.
Now, tell us when you say science. Tell us a little more what you mean by that when it comes to baking. What science is involved?
Yeah, so I think that baking is really similar to chemistry and the way that things react. You're adding fats and eggs that contain fat and yolks and no fat and whites and aerate at a certain temperature, and then you mix all of this stuff together and then you add heat, and then it creates this whole process of reactions. So I think that it's definitely most related to chemistry specifically.
Oh, now when you create something, are you thinking taste? Where's the starting point to create something new and fresh?
I think that it's really a balancing act. I think a lot of pastry chefs would say they're perfectionists, which obviously is impossible to be perfect, but um, we're always thinking about everything, the way it tastes, the way it looks, the way that someone's going to experience it when it's served to them. Is it going to be warm? Is it going to be cold? Is there going to be a balance of salt and sugar and acid and everything else? And so I think you're trying to think about everything at once. And that's why sometimes it takes a long time to get something the way you want it. I worked on my chocolate chip cookie recipe for probably 8 years before I was really happy with it. And I mean, 8 years of my life just to get a really good chocolate chip cookie seems ridiculous, but I'm pretty proud of it. So I think that, um, like I said before, just this industry specifically breeds a certain kind of person that is thinking about everything all at once, all the time.
So now again, I only have my limited experience, but like chocolate chip cookies, is there a difference in a chocolate chip cookie that you're going to serve at a fine dining establishment as opposed to a more casual or maybe just a bakery that people would come into? Is it a different taste that you or palette that you're trying to create for, or
Yeah, I think that if you use the example of a chocolate chip cookie, when you go to a fine dining restaurant, the price is higher, the expectations are higher, and people are looking almost to try something different that they've never had before. So it's not just a normal chocolate chip cookie, you're adding other flavors that you wouldn't expect, or doing something, a different technique where you're taking the cookie and blending it and reforming it into something else. And it's the fine dining world is definitely elevated in a way that creates a whole new separate situation. And I think that that's maybe why I kind of fall in the middle where I am now of, nicer establishment, but not something that is fine dining, something that is still approachable. Because I think that people get away from why they make food, and really it's to create a community. And so sometimes I feel like fine dining kind of steers away from that in a way that they forget about that. So my goal is to kind of balance with high quality, but then also still approachable and something that evokes community and memories.
that's good. That's inspiring. Is do cakes, like the cake boss, is that a pastry chef, or is that a different role in the kitchen?
I would say he probably started out as a pastry chef and now he is probably an entrepreneur and has his other investments of, he has his bakery and probably does the shows and kind of steps back away from it because it is a hard life to continue doing for a long time and a lot of work and long hours, and probably doesn't do it as much anymore.
So you as part of your profession would be the person who creates those fancy, or by fancy I just mean creative cakes. Now, again, I'm just going just on my experience here, so this may be not true at all. Okay, so don't. So tell me. But my experience is, a lot of times it must be challenging to create, a cake that looks like a rainforest that actually tastes good at the same time. Because I've seen beautiful cakes, that didn't really taste very good.
Yeah.
It's always kind of disappointing. But I would imagine that some of the materials you have to use to make a tree might be difficult to make taste good at the same time. Is there sometimes, are you having to weigh those sacrifices when you're trying to create something or asked to create something?
Yeah, I think that that is a good question because I feel like I think people expect if you're a pastry chef, you can make crazy rainforest cakes. And for me, I weigh taste over style sometimes. And I feel that um, I feel comfortable saying no to something because that's not my style or within something that I feel like it represents me as a pastry chef. We had a wedding this past weekend and I did the wedding cake, and that we have to think about stability. We have to think about taste and construction. And they also outsourced a groom's cake that was decorated with fondant and made to look like a football field. And I said no to that because I feel that fondant is not something that I want to eat or serve to someone because I don't think it is appetizing. And it's also something that I don't do on the regular basis. So I don't feel that it's worth it for us as a company to do that. So it is a balance of what you are willing to say yes or no to. And there are so many people out there that do these kinds of jobs that it's okay to say no to something and say, hey, this person probably does it better, and let that customer just choose if they want taste or style more.
Now, do you find that in your experience, in your profession, do most chefs have that kind of conviction, or I'm sure the other side of it is money. I mean, in the sense,
Yeah.
what they're going to pay for is what I'm willing to create.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a balancing act. I think that when I was younger, I would say yes to a lot of things that would stress me out and would I feel compromised who I was as a chef. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more confident in saying no. I think that um in this industry right now, before it was very much the customer is always right, which to some extent we still follow, but I think that there needs to be an understanding of, we have done this is our career. You don't ask a doctor if, they're right in what they're choosing to do or not. They've gone to school for that as well. So I think that for me, I feel confident saying no because I have so many years of experience now and saying, well, this is what I'm confident in doing and executing and presenting to you creatively and tasting. It's multidimensional with creativity. So it's just being confident in saying, no, that's not what I do.
Now that's interesting, and it's always inspiring when somebody lives by their convictions, and are driven by something with more meaning than just getting paid.
Yeah.
Do you think all the shows and the different things has upped people's respect for what you do? Where maybe in the past, a cook was a cook. You know what I mean? And people have been educated by the different shows that it's much more.
Yeah, I think that people understand it to some extent. I think that it also glamorizes the job and makes people think that that's what we do all the time, and it's not. um, for when I lived in Nashville for 4 years, I got off of work on a Friday at like 8 p.m. and had to be back at work at 4 a.m. in the morning to do brunch. And I did that for 4 years, and it wasn't fun and it wasn't glamorous at all. Um, but then I think that's with anything like social media or TV, kind of show all the good parts and not the negative parts. So I think it's just understanding that, yes, all these things are real and all of them are beautiful and people are really great at what they do. But before you maybe decide to jump into this industry, kind of do some digging and understand, like, would I be willing to sacrifice all these things to do this?
It is someone who is a chef. Is that determined by the amount of education they have, experience they have, or how do you become a chef?
Yeah, so I think that there's a conversation about how people go to culinary school and people that don't, and does that make them better? And I don't think that it does. I think that it really comes down to experience and hard work. And, over time, you will gain that wisdom of how to be a chef and you'll be given the opportunity if you work hard enough. I went to culinary school because I didn't have the confidence to just jump right into the industry. And I felt that I needed a bachelor's degree. So I went to the Culinary Institute in New York. And I think it was worth it for me. And I think that it depends on the person whether or not it's necessary.
Has the science and the creating of the food been the most challenging for you, or running the kitchen? And which one is the most fun for you, as far as leading the people or creating the food?
I think that for me, it is more challenging to manage people just because I am a people pleaser and I do not want to upset people. So being a manager of people and having to tell them when they're not doing a good job and being honest and saying you need to do this differently or whatever, it's difficult because I don't want to be quote unquote mean, but I'm not being mean. I'm just telling them how to do their job. And that's been a process of differentiating for me. Um, and I do probably enjoy just making the food more. It's exciting. I went to art school before I went to culinary school, and I realized that my medium was not something within the art realm. It was food, and you're making your own medium and then creating something with the cakes and the buttercream that you make. So it's, like I said before, it's multidimensional. So it's so exciting to be able to make your paints and then create something on top of that.
That's yeah. So with that in mind, are there real Gordon Ramsays in kitchens when it comes to all the yelling and screaming? And is that real life or is that just TV life?
Sadly, it is real life. I think there is a movement within the industry to make that unacceptable. When I first started, I definitely had those experiences. I had chefs yelling at me. I had a chef throw pineapple at me once. Um, I've had some pretty bad experiences, and I think that recently there has been a movement to that be non-tolerable, and James Beard Awards is a very big award that people can win, and some chefs got taken off of the list this year because it was revealed that they were yelling and mistreating their employees. So it's definitely changing and for better, but it's still a process.
So tell us, what are some of the pressures? Because since you've worked in all of these different types of establishments, what are some of the pressures that maybe, especially in a restaurant type atmosphere, that we might not even be aware of that are happening, back in the kitchen as we enjoy our meal?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different variables. Like I said before, it's a sport during service, dinner service. You're kind of on defense during the day. You're getting ready for the fastest paced part of your day, and you're making sure that you have everything ready. Sometimes the freezer breaks and you don't have ice cream, and you have to go to the store and buy dry ice and make sure the ice cream stay cold in like a store-bought cooler so that none of your guests are aware that you're having any issues. Sometimes your purveyors don't send you the flour that you ordered, so you have to go to the grocery store and buy flour at triple the price and see if that's worth it or not. Sometimes you're busier than you expect and you sell out of something and you have to make more on the fly, as one would say in the kitchen, and you just have to run around like a chicken with your head cut off until you get that made. And there's a lot of different variables going on at once, and the goal as a restaurant is to create this atmosphere where it seems like everything is perfect and everything is relaxed and everyone is having a good time, but in the background sometimes it's quite crazy.
Uh, you mentioned about creating food and community. Do you get your greatest joy from watching people consume what you make, or the process of creating it, or what brings you your greatest joy in what you do?
Yeah, I think that the most important moments of our life are around a table. Weddings, you're sitting at a table and you're eating and you're socializing with friends. At a funeral, you go out back to someone's house and you eat food and you socialize and you memorize that person. And so I feel like for me, just being able to see families and friends like sit down and enjoy something together is like the most thrilling part of my job. And now that working at this establishment, we have weddings 15 weeks a year, and seeing like the bride and groom's reaction to the wedding cake that I've created for them is so memorable. I had a bride a couple weeks ago. She ordered a wedding cake that was replicating her grandmother's and wore the dress that her grandmother had worn cutting the cake. And I almost cried because it was like my goal as a pastry chef is to create those moments of like, wow, she's going to remember that for the rest of her life, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I didn't think the chef that created that grandmother's cake,
Yeah.
and had no idea that it would be replicated so many years later,
Yes.
and have that.
Exciting that it transpired over multiple people.
Yeah, there's the scripture talks a lot about the power of food and the intentionality, to create it in such a way that it provides that kind of community for people
Yeah.
to gather. Well, I want to thank you once again. It's hard to believe we've been talking for 30 minutes. I find what you do incredibly interesting, and and valuable and impacts so many of our lives, and often or seldom, I guess, do we really get an opportunity to talk to somebody who impacts our life in such a way. You think there are not a lot of things in life that you look forward to, like a good meal or a chocolate chip cookie or dessert, those kind of things. So in one way, even though you may not get recognized for being the person who brings it about, you do get the opportunity each day to be a part of producing something that people look forward to.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible gift. So thank you for what you do.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
And again, tell us once again, one more time, where it is that you are using your skills and talents.
Yeah. So it's at RT Lodge in Knoxville, Tennessee. Boutique hotel, restaurant, event space.
Right. So if you're in Knoxville or on your way to somewhere else in Tennessee, stop by and try. Now, are your chocolate chip cookies available there?
Yes.
All right.
You have to order them special if you're just coming into the restaurant, but I'm happy to make them.
All right. Well, I will have to stop by and get some chocolate chip. I think it might be worth spending the night, and everybody here in the room is agreeing
Yeah.
that great field trip for us to take.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, and we really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hey, you guys so much for hanging out with us. It really has been just incredibly insightful to think about all the energy, effort, intentionality that goes into what we consume. And so spend some time today and look around. You might be surprised at all the design elements that are impacting you and how you can then be intentional in the things that you do to positively impact the people around you. Be sure to tune in next Thursday as we continue the series. We're on all the streaming apps, right, where you get your podcast, or if you want to see the video version, it's on YouTube. See you next Thursday on the Troy Gramling Podcast. God bless.